Are you concerned that the bottleneck of builder homes under construction will cause a new housing bubble as they finally are completed? After all, the U.S. has reached a new record for the number of homes under construction. About 20% more homes are being built today than when the housing bubble was forming back in 2006, and there is no sign that the new construction pipeline will reverse anytime soon. Perhaps the biggest housing market fears being hyped on social media concern the flood of new homes that will hit the market when construction is completed. These reports declare that inventories will be soaring while home prices crash. I've seen many reports calling for as much as a 50% price correction due to the decline in demand and rise in inventory. Rather than take these unsupported prophecies as fact, why not follow the data and see where it leads us? That's what we've done in today's video. Follow along as I share information not discussed by the fearmongers calling for a flood of new construction homes, creating a new housing bubble. Before we get to the analysis, I've included a link below to all new construction homes in Florida's Big Bend so that our viewers can see what's available today, including several great deals on snowbird homes on Florida's Forgotten Coast. Today's U.S. housing market is rife with rumors and speculation unlike any other I've ever seen. I've been selling homes in Tallahassee for over 31 years, but this is the first significant market swing during social media-fueled full community involvement. It seems that everybody has an opinion. Unfortunately, for many people who believe what they're fed on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, the not-so-silent majority leads them astray with half-truths and full-out lies. Sensationalism is the theme of the day, and, as they say, if it bleeds, it reads. So don't be so quick to make a decision based upon the social media consensus. My observations today are evolved from an article by Kevin Erdman, a gentleman who has written 2 books on the housing market and has the top real estate newsletter I'm aware of. He offers both a free version and a paid version of his newsletter, and I recommend anybody with a stake in the housing market to subscribe to either version. Let's look at 4 graphs that provide insight into the current record-setting pipeline of new homes under construction in America. When you go into YouTube and see video titles calling for a 50% price correction in housing, it's often supported by the following information about the current number of privately owned housing units under construction. This graph clearly shows that the pipeline is at an all-time high, 20% higher than in January 2006, and the trend is still moving higher. Many people are concerned about what will happen when all these homes hit the market. There are 2 hugely important factors when considering the abundant pipeline revealed in this graph. First, the pipeline is larger because it is taking longer to build homes today due to supply chain disruptions. And second, most homes are selling before or as they are completed. We will know an oversupply problem is mounting when the months of supply of completed homes begins to rise rapidly. If you're a longtime subscriber, then you know I often discuss the supply and demand for homes because it is the foundation required for anticipating housing bubbles and changes in home prices. If you're not a subscriber, please click the thumbs up like button and subscribe now so that you get all my new content when it is fresh. If you really want to know what's going on in housing, to see and hear the data explained, to evaluate the facts and ignore the hype that is so prevalent online, then subscribe now and I'll keep you in the know. This graph plots the median months of supply of new construction homes in the U.S. The number of finished, ready to buy and occupy new construction homes is near an all-time low at fewer than 2 months of supply. This is diametrically different from a growing inventory of homes. As I explained in a previous video, the current pipeline of new homes being built is taking nearly 50% longer to shed new homes. Thus, the pipeline can be 50% larger without it producing homes at a faster rate. This graph was inspired by a recent post by Erdman, who warned that any record number has to be scaled with the size of a country over time. So, for example, 500,000 more units in our country today with 142 million existing homes is a lot different than 500,000 more units in our country 50 years ago with 76 million units. We have plotted the new construction pipeline relative to the U.S. population over the years. The blue line plots the vacant units for rent compared to the population size. For example, at the far left of the graph, there were roughly 11 vacant for rent housing units for every 1,000 people in the U.S., whereas today we have just a little more than 8 vacant for rent housing units for every 1,000 people in the U.S. The red line reveals that there were just under 4 vacant for sale housing units for every 1,000 people in 2000, whereas there are about half as many today. When we examine both the blue and red lines together, we see that vacancies today are lower than at any time in the past 22 years. Homes today are being used at the highest rate on record, a sign that we have too few homes available for our growing population. Finally, the gray line reports that about 5 housing units are under construction for every 1,000 people today, slightly higher than the peak in 2006. This could be cause for concern, but the fact that homes are taking longer to build more than compensates for the difference in the totals of then versus now. Erdman advises the decline in vacancies since the Great Recession has been unprecedented, from 14 rental units per 1,000 residents to 8, and from 8 units for sale to 2. Back to 2000, the previous lows had been about 10 and 4. There are about 2.5 units per 1,000 residents under construction in both the apartments and single-family categories. In other words, if every single unit under construction was finished tomorrow and sold, and all else being equal, vacancies would rise back to where they were in about 2017 and back in 2000. Those were both periods with constrained supply, as evidenced by the next graph, which shows shelter inflation, which is mostly rent inflation, relative to non-shelter core inflation. Rent inflation should not be persistently more than general inflation. Longtime viewers on our channel know that we have been warning about a home affordability crisis for several years, long before mortgage interest rates rose and home prices rose to current levels. This graph shows the problem has been brewing for far longer. The red line plots shelter inflation, mainly rents, while the blue line plots the non-shelter core inflation. The gray line reveals the difference between the two measurements. At the far left of the graph, shelter inflation trailed non-shelter core inflation by nearly 18% from 1957 through the late 1960s. This means that rents were rising at rates slower than most goods and services. At the far right of the graph, we now see rents growing far faster than most goods and services. A simple conclusion from this graph is that compared to other goods and services, the cost of renting a home has been rising fast. I have highlighted 3 points on the graph. Point A, something occurred in the late 1960s that caused rents to accelerate in growth more so than other goods and services. Point B, in the mid-1980s, we saw shelter inflation draw even with non-shelter core inflation and then finally pass it. In other words, this is when the home affordability crisis began to develop. Point C, something occurred in the mid-1990s that caused shelter inflation to accelerate far faster than non-shelter core inflation. I suspect some of our viewers will have ideas about what occurred at points A, B, and or C. If you think you know, share your thoughts in the comments below. No housing bubble is forming. The National Board of Realtors estimates that the U.S. is about 5.5 million homes short of what's needed for balance in the overall U.S. housing market. A housing bubble, however, requires the supply of homes to grow and outrace a declining demand. The total pipeline of new homes under construction is less than 1/3 of the total shortage. Remember, we don't need 5.5 million homes to balance the market. We need 5.5 million homes plus the normal 1.2 million average annual new home construction deliveries. When we account for the number of homes needed to keep the market undersupplied, the current pipeline level will not fix the housing shortage within the next 10 years. So long as builders build too few housing units, we don't have to worry about supply running amok. Yes, the pipeline of homes under construction is higher than usual, but so is the time it takes to bring these much-needed homes to the market. When we look at how the increased pipeline has influenced supply, we see the deficiency grow. I'm a broken record on home affordability, but it's such an urgent and important issue that it requires mentioning again. Home affordability is tanking in the U.S. and is directly related to the lack of shelter required by our growing population. The pace of new home construction slowed in 2008 and has remained far too low for more than 15 years. This shortage has created soaring rents, soaring home prices, and a reversal in the U.S. homeless trend in 2018. If you want to be part of the solution, it starts with choosing elected officials who understand the need for housing and then holding them accountable for delivering solutions. If you want to see a video featuring my 9 tips for buying a home in a highly competitive market, you can view it by clicking on the box in the top left corner of your screen. To see a popular video featuring my top 6 home selling tips, just click on the box below it. Please remember to like this video, check out the links below it, and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss anything.